Hi, I'm Margi Preus, and this is Storms Coming, written by me and illustrated by David Geister and published by the Minnesota Historical Society Press. This story takes place at Split Rock Lighthouse, which is on the north shore of Lake Superior. And the story takes place about 100 years ago when there were 3 families living at the lighthouse. Their fathers were the lighthouse keepers. And let's see here, you can kind of see where they lived. These 3 families had a lot of kids, and the kids had a lot of fun playing together. But they also had to kind of keep track of the weather. It was important because the lighthouse, here it is, would be lit on stormy days or stormy nights to keep boats and ships that were out on Lake Superior from running into these tall, high, dangerous cliffs. Being aware of the weather was very important. But 100 years ago, they didn't have television, they didn't have radio, and they didn't have smartphones. How did they know what the weather was going to do? Let's find out and see if you can keep track of the ways the children found out whether a storm was coming. "My," Mama said, as Sophie came into the kitchen, "this bread dough is rising fast." "Maybe there's a storm coming," Sophie exclaimed. "That's true." Mama eyed the puffy dough. "Bread always rises faster before a storm." "I better warn Papa," Sophie cried. "All right," Mama said, "but first tell Dan to bring in some wood for the cook stove." Sophie found Dan in the garden picking cucumbers. "Mama wants you to bring in wood for the cook stove. Storm's coming." "How do you know?" "Look at those busy bees," Sophie exclaimed. "They know it's going to storm." Dan watched the bees flying into their hive. "That's true," he said. "You know what they say, a bee was never caught in a shower." "I have to warn Papa." Sophie hopped up and down on one foot. "First," Dan said, "you better tell Polly to take the sheets off the clothesline." Sophie ran to the yard where Polly was hanging laundry. "Storm's coming," Sophie said. "Are you sure?" Polly asked. Sophie picked a dandelion and held it up. "Right," Polly said. "Dandelion blossoms close up before a rain." "So you better take the sheets off the line and fast," Sophie said. "I have to warn Papa." As Sophie raced off, Polly called after her, "Maybe you better tell Elizabeth to come home from blueberry picking." Wind billowed Sophie's skirt as she sprinted to the blueberry patch. Elizabeth sat in the middle, picking lots of plump and juicy berries. "Storm's coming," Sophie said. "Really?" Elizabeth asked. "That spider thinks so," Sophie said, pointing. "Look at that web. See how the frame lines are short and stout?" "That's true," Elizabeth agreed. "She's making her web strong. Wind and rain are coming." "You better go home right away," Sophie said. "I have to warn Papa." Elizabeth scampered off, calling over her shoulder, "Tell Tim and Ted to come in off the lake and pull up the boat." Leaves twisted and fluttered in the cool breeze as Sophie skittered down the steep stairway to the lake. "Storm!" Sophie hollered to Tim and Ted. "What?" Tim yelled back. Sophie pointed at the gulls swooping near the water, and the boys started to row for shore. "You know what they say," Ted said while Tim tied the boat. "If birds fly low, then rain we shall know." "I have to warn Papa," Sophie said. "That's a good idea," the boys agreed. Sophie hiked up the big hill under darkening skies. She rushed to the oil house where she found Papa filling cans with gasoline. "Papa, Papa," she cried, "storm's coming." "Is that so?" Papa asked, yanking on the door. "Listen to what that catchy door has to say." Papa put his ear to the door. Catchy door and sticky drawer, he said. Coming rain will pour and pour. We better make sure the foghorn is ready, Sophie said, in case it gets foggy. Sophie helped Papa lug the gasoline cans to the fog signal building, where Papa poured the fuel into the engine that made the foghorn blow. Now, Papa said, you better run along home. Yes, Sophie agreed, but Papa, shouldn't we make sure the light is all set in case it gets very dark during the storm? Papa sighed and said, all right then. Sophie followed him up the 32 steps of the lighthouse. She checked the windows as she climbed, making sure each one was shut tight. Glancing out, she saw black clouds moving across the sky. The lake below was a shifting pattern of green, black, and purple. At the top, Sophie helped wind the clock that kept the lens turning on time. Then Papa said, now you better run home. But Papa, Sophie said, shouldn't we polish the lens to make sure the light is bright for the stormy night ahead? I'll polish the lens. Papa took out his special cloth. It has to be done just so. You better run along home. Oh no, Papa, I can't. I have to stay here with you. Why? Papa asked. Because, Sophie began. Just then, a big jagged flash lit the sky. Thunder boomed and rain lashed against the windows. Sophie smiled up at Papa. It's storming.